This presentation will show you, a small or medium enterprise board director, executive, or investor, how to develop a culture of cybersecurity that addresses the only cybersecurity question that matters: how to avoid the $9 million cyber breach. Why is this a board and C-suite level issue and not the CISOs? Well, because culture starts at the top, of course, and because you now have a fiduciary duty to oversee a creation of and to foster that culture of cybersecurity and to live it authentically yourself. And as DHS CISO's Jen Easterly recently said in front of world leaders in Munich, cybersecurity is ultimately not about technology, but about people and culture. With that, let me first walk you through a few statistics and case studies that will show you why the board and C-suite role is so clearly urgent to be addressed. Boards and C-suites face a new pandemic. At $6 trillion, cybercrime is now the third largest economy in the world after US and China. 50% of those cyber attacks target small and medium businesses, which are least prepared. Yet according to IBM, the average cost of an SMB breach in 2021 in the US was a whopping $6.35 million and $9 million across all company sizes. Worse yet, the chance of experiencing a data breach within a 2-year period was about 33% in 2021, making the probability adjusted cost of a breach in the US $2.1 million for SMBs and $3 million for all businesses. If that weren't bad enough, it takes an SMB 6.5 months to even discover it's been breached, which means cyber criminals can mess with your and your organization's confidential data for months before you even notice something's wrong. Between this delay and the exorbitant financial, emotional, operational, and reputational costs of a breach, 60% of SMBs are forced to shut down within 6 months of a breach. Directors and officers, so-called cyber whales, are a particularly easy target because you not only have access to everything, you're also time poor and generally insufficiently trained in cyber defense strategies required for your threat level. And because hackers get 70% of the information they want from you within 1 hour of attack, breaching you is the deadliest to your organization. That is why when cybercrime was barely kicking off, hackers were already getting nearly $4 million per breach by exploiting executives' individual vulnerabilities to access their organization's data, just by targeting you. Even Forbes concludes that cyber attacks are particularly effective against executives because your every move, voice, tone are telegraphed for the world to see, making impersonating you in front of third parties easy. So you have to take control of your self-focused cybersecurity as a professional, private citizen, and family, because all three are now being used to breach your organization. Worse yet, with specific cybersecurity laws now carrying even a 5-year prison sentence per violation, boards and executives are increasingly targeted by regulators for cyber negligence. So you have to know and carefully discharge your cybersecurity fiduciary duties. And there are many. At the root of these cyber breaches are not cyber insecure technologies, but rather cyber insecure behaviors, which in fact make up nearly 97% of all cyber breaches. And this means that at the root of this problem is not the CISO or CTO, but boards and executive teams that do not create, foster, and oversee and authentically practice themselves cultures of cybersecure behaviors. That's problematic because the gap between the $182 billion a year cybersecurity solutions market and the $6 trillion cybercrime economy is widening. In fact, cybercrime is expected to reach $10.5 trillion annually by 2025. Digitalization is only expanding the threat landscape, attracting even more hackers. Forbes rightly concludes that the best defense, therefore, is the executive between the keyboard and the chair. And breach prevention doesn't rest in the CISO fixing the 3% of the problem having to do with cyber and secure technologies. It rests in each board director and executive creating, fostering, and authentically living and overseeing a culture of cybersecurity. That is your most critical defense strategy. Because if you don't achieve a culture of cybersecurity right through prevention, responding to a breach will cost you 10 to 40 times more, and that doesn't even include the operational, emotional, and reputational costs of the breach, which often dwarf the financial losses. Let me share 2 case studies of a chairman, CEO, and investor who originally misunderstood the level of strategy their cybersecurity required of them and where things didn't go so well. These are quite representative of what happens in a breach. One world-renowned billion-dollar unicorn founder followed all industry best practices for network and asset cybersecurity, including air-gapping her intellectual property on a computer inaccessible to the internet and behind all sorts of physical security barriers. And yet, her IP was breached, stolen, and put on the dark web for sale, plunging the company valuation. How did it happen? Hackers originating from China exploited the chairwoman and employees' cyber insecure behaviors, breaching their work devices through their cyber insecure home devices, and then even bribing security guards and physically infiltrating the company with their own spies posing as employees. All because the company didn't have a robust enough strategy for cybersecure behaviors and geopolitical attack defense methods, or robust board oversight strategies for a culture of cybersecurity. The cost? Financial and reputational Armageddon, combined with serious emotional and physical damage to employees professionally and at home. In another case, a $100 million family office investor dragged his feet on working with us on a breach prevention case for 2 months, only to later find out that hackers were on his network for those exact 2 months. His mistake cost the company 3 months of breach cleanup at 40 times the cost of the breach prevention program that would have fully prevented this very breach. The reputational damage and investor withdrawal he suffered, along with emotional angst and post-traumatic stress disorder of will it happen again, caused him to sign on with us after his brand nearly got destroyed. Don't be them, and don't allow your board and executive team to be them. Don't procrastinate or downplay risks. If you have anything worth anything to anyone, you and your board are a target. But why am I so focused on your cybersecurity? Well, because years ago, my own venture was shut down by a cyber attack that targeted me, my board of directors, executives, and because even though we weren't negligent and in fact ran our company at the highest level of technological cybersecurity, unlike then, regulations now stipulate imprisonment of up to 5 years for any director convicted of cybersecurity negligence. And if a board as sophisticated as ours, with CEOs of major corporations on our board, was successfully targeted this way, any board is at risk. We saw our venture disintegrate within a couple of months of the breach, the same way that till this day, 60+% of SMBs go out of business within 6.5 months of a breach. We thought we were cybersecure because our technologies were. Sadly, neither the private sector nor I, my board, executive team, or investors at the time knew that cybersecurity is only 3% technology and 97% cybersecure behaviors. I wish I had a solution then that taught us how to achieve that culture of cybersecurity and behaviors at the board and executive level. Losing my venture made me angry, but I saw it as a call to action, and not seeing a robust solution in the market that helps boards and executive teams create and maintain a 360 culture of cybersecurity that actually stands a chance of deterring a breach, I created the Executive Cybersecurity Blueprint to deliver precisely that. Hi, I'm Andrzej Sitnarski, and I'm a national security and cybersecurity strategist, former tech and defense UBS investment banker, serial global entrepreneur, Forbes cyber defense contributor, co-chairman of the International Cyber Security Summit, and alumnus of Harvard, Wharton, UPenn, and University of Chicago. I'm also the creator of CyberNation Central, a cyber defense ecosystem bringing you breach prevention, breach response, cybersecurity thought leadership, and technology innovation. Over the years, I've realized that to be a cybersecurity forward board chairman, director, CEO, entrepreneur, or investor, you, not your CTO or CISOs, must know how to be cyber armed. Not just technologically, but also behaviorally. And not just at the average employee's level, but at the level of threats facing you and I. And also not just at work, but at home, because your personal life is now used to breach you at work. And finally, not just at the individual level, but at a cybersecurity fiduciary level as well. And to authentically create and lead a culture of cybersecurity, you must first live it yourself, as an individual and as a fiduciary. Your CTO cannot behave cybersecurely for you, discharge your cybersecurity fiduciary duties for you, or lead a culture of cybersecurity for you. That's your job, right? Now, over the past 6 years, I've helped hundreds of leaders globally transform their cultures into cybersecure ones away from cyber insecurity, including those that represent Citi, Hewlett-Packard, United Nations, Wharton, Harvard Business School, NSA, UBS, Bank of America, and countless others we cannot name for security reasons, from the healthcare industry to defense, national security, finance, investment, banking, family office, venture capital, private equity, NGO, law, and many others from across 15 countries and 6 continents. And I'd like to help you as well. Let me show you a few brief case studies of board directors, executives, entrepreneurs, and investors we've helped who saw the problem and the opportunity in working with us and have been getting the benefit of not only a culture of cybersecurity, but breach deterrence since. CEO of a healthcare company, former CEO of a VC and family office platform, and former investment banker, Dominic R., said, "The blueprint training helped me realize that my self-focused professional, personal, and family cybersecurity was weak, and that of my board directors even more so, because neither I nor my IT focused on our level of threats any differently than those against our employees. This blueprint helped us build a culture of cybersecurity from the boardroom down, providing both our board directors and execs an organization-wide cybersecurity strategy and self-focused cybersecurity blueprint. This was a seriously beneficial experience. Thanks, CNC team." Pleasure. Entrepreneur CEO of a global 100% virtual transatlantic corporation, on the other hand, James B., said, "Recently, I was subject to a disinformation campaign resulting from a cyber breach. I knew I had to take control of my cybersecurity to assure my clients and organization that I was doing all I could not to become a victim again. Without any previous technical training, this training taught me how to upgrade my technology and behaviors across my digital presence. Going through this training was also quite liberating because I not only learned how to create and drive a culture of cybersecurity in my family and organization, but because I could now walk into any board or management meeting or meeting with my CTO and know exactly what needed addressing. That's the whole point. Great. My CTO," he says, "also benefited significantly because he now not only has a more cybersecurely behaving CEO, but also a stronger cybersecurity champion." That's so critical because boards and CTOs often diverge on knowledge and what needs to be done in cybersecurity. Senior advisor to vice president of a Central American country and board director herself, June, said, "Prior to going through the training, I didn't realize that as a board member, I can be a liability and a source of cyber insecurity at best, and cyber breach and harm, at worst, to the organization I'm advising because of the confidential information I have access to. It's true. I can say that not only is the training not time-consuming, but is a very profitable time. The training not only helped me rectify my own behaviors and practices, but also gave me an entire board strategy for creating a culture of cybersecurity in my organization across all board, executive, and employee stakeholders. And I achieved this transformation despite being a non-technical person. Great. Angela Z, senior official in the Office of the United Nations Secretary General, also added, I have been searching for an appropriate training product tailored to a senior leader, one that would provide both strategic and practical guidance, and I'm delighted with my choice. And I strongly recommend it to any senior official or executive with my type of public profile. Imagine becoming the chief executive and receiving a top secret briefing of technical and behavioral tools you could use to defend against real and potential adversaries. That was this program, and it truly left no area uncovered. The training structure itself was also excellent, and the instructor is an excellent communicator who breaks down complex subjects into easily understandable segments. Great. So who needs to pay attention to what I'm about to teach you? Well, board directors, CEOs, entrepreneurs, investors, and other executives who have access to or are charged with the fiduciary duty to protect sensitive data and digital crown jewels, as well as hard-earned success, reputation, wealth, and legacy of their own and their organizations. This is also for you if you want to develop a culture of cybersecurity at work and at home, but don't know what that means and what your cybersecurity fiduciary responsibilities really are, much less how to execute them fully. It's also for you if you want to take control of your own professional, personal, and family cybersecurity 360 degrees. Or if you suspect that you, not your CTO, are responsible for driving a cybersecure culture, or you've perhaps even heard members of US Congress point blank tell you it's your responsibility while simultaneously passing laws that penalize you more than your CTO in a cyber breach, as has been the case. Or if you fear that your board directors aren't cybersecure enough, behaviorally and technologically, to withstand an attack on them that targets their access to your organization's sensitive information. As Department of Homeland Security, CISO Director and former Morgan Stanley cybersecurity head Jen Easterly said recently in Munich, cybersecurity is ultimately not about technology. It's about people and culture. And culture starts at the top. If your board and executive team are not behaving cybersecurely themselves, professionally, personally, and as families, and are then creating, fostering, and driving this culture of both self-focused cybersecurity through the organization and of cybersecurity fiduciary duty discharge throughout the board and executive ranks, then you would have wasted hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on advanced technologies that completely fail the hacker deterrence test. Because even though the best CISO, or I should say, because even the best CISO cannot behave cybersecurely for you or lead a culture of cybersecurity for you. That is your job. And given that cybersecurity is no longer an issue of even just technology and behaviors, but is rather also an issue of corporate strategy, geopolitical chess, technology innovation, and regulatory oversight compliance, if your board and executive team aren't integrating these into one cohesive strategic and tactical plan of cyber defense, and one that helps translate your organization from physical into digital and then into cybersecure, then you are paving a way for hackers to breach you, thus risking your entire legacy. So, how do you actually develop a breach deterrent blueprint that helps you create and maintain a culture capable of avoiding the $9 million average price tag of a cyber breach, right? That's the most important question. So there are 6 steps to this, and they fall into 3 parts. Right? Part 1, get everybody trained. Part 2, stay current. And part 3, access external expertise as needed. Let's review each of them in tandem. Part 1, get your entire board and executive team trained on self-focused, so professional, personal, and family, cybersecurity, and organization-focused cybersecurity, fiduciary duties, responsibilities, strategies, and tactics. So you all sing from the same proverbial song sheet and can bring this culture into your employee ranks. Getting trained follows 4 steps. Step 1, assess your threats. Step 2, master your self-focused cybersecurity. Step 3, take control of your organization-focused cybersecurity fiduciary duties. And step 4, implement these steps 1 through 3 into your own personalized, executable cybersecurity blueprint that you can continuously refer to and update from there. Let's dive into these 4 steps of part 1 in more detail. Step 1 of getting trained involves your need to assess your threats so you know which are the most urgent to address. Because some require critical urgency while others don't. Now, in the past, you'd assess your cyber risks usually by 1, outsourcing the assessment to your CTO, 2, assessing only your technology weaknesses, forgetting your behaviors, or 3, assessing your risks at the average employee level rather than at your executive-specific higher risk level. You'd also likely downplay your risks and procrastinate on response. Or worse yet, you'd not assess or even understand your risks to begin with, much less prioritize your response to each. But following this path, you continuously and fully expose yourself to a breach regardless of how cybersecure your technologies are, thus, at some point, catching hackers' attention. Instead, by understanding the threats you, your directors, and executives face in not just your professional, but also your personal and family lives, and also understanding those threats' financial, operational, emotional, and reputational costs if they materialize, and prioritizing your response urgency against each threat, you will have also, 1, covered all your employee-specific threats, since they're just a subset of your executive threats, and covered 97% of cyber threats facing your organization via cyber insecure behaviors, as well as the 3% resulting from cyber insecure technologies. You will thus also have created a solid foundation for authentically creating and fostering a breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity, which will parallel your CTO's efforts to cybersecure your enterprise network infrastructure. Together with your CTO, if you do this, you now cover your entire risk profile and actually stand a chance of avoiding a breach. Now, step 2 of getting trained requires that you actually master your self-focused cybersecurity so you can drive that culture of cybersecurity in your organization authentically. Now, in the past, directors and executives wouldn't equate the need for their own individual cybersecure behaviors and tech best practices, much less their families, as a necessity for driving the cybersecurity of their organizations. But how can you possibly drive a culture of cybersecurity if you yourself are not practicing it, right? Especially at a time when remote work exposes your organization to your and each of your executives and employees' cyber insecure home environments, right? Now, worse yet, executives would previously buy piecemeal solutions like an antivirus, firewall, VPN, etc., mistakenly thinking that they sufficiently cybersecured them. Or they'd manage their passwords in Excel or on a piece of paper, or they'd mistakenly think their CTO would keep them cybersecure professionally, or that their personal and professional cybersecurity were the same thing when they're absolutely not. Following this antiquated path, you'd not only waste money, but risk a breach because real cyber threat deterrence would never be reached, leaving you and your organization cyber insecure, an easy target for hackers, and therefore a risk to you and your legacy, your family and your organization. Instead, you and your directors and executives ought to, 1, understand the full extent of your 3 cyber avatars, professional, personal, and family, and how these fit into your organization's broader cyber avatar. Then, take 360-degree control of these 3 avatars' cybersecurity, and 3, finally, drive this self-focused culture of cybersecurity throughout your organization. Now, this involves understanding of 6 areas related to it. Area 1, understand that organizational cybersecurity equals enterprise tech cybersecurity, mostly your CISO's job, plus people cybersecurity, everyone's job, where people cybersecurity equals general employee plus board and executive plus third-party cybersecurity, where board and executive-facing cyber threats are bigger, right, and more serious than general employee-facing ones. Now, area 2, board and executive cybersecurity equals cybersecurity as a professional, private citizen, and family. Area 3, become acutely aware of what your organization does and does not cover for you in terms of cybersecurity and cyber insurance, because there are significant gaps that expose your organization and you individually to unmitigated risk and even imprisonment. For example, your organization rarely, if ever, cybersecures you at the level of threats facing you, usually because of insufficient executive-specific threat expertise, budget necessary for costly 24/7 executive-level threat management, or awareness of nuances in your professional, personal, and family cyber risks and their effect on your organization, or even cybersecurity policies. For example, I guarantee that however strong or weak your organization's cybersecurity policies are, you do not enforce your board directors to follow those policies the same way you may require your employees to follow them, if at all, right? Think about that. And that's seriously negligent because it's your director's highest level clearance that exposes you and your organization to highest risk, right? They have access to everything. Also, your organization never covers your personal or family cybersecurity, nor will it ever, because that would seriously violate your privacy. But you need to cybersecure your personal and family behaviors and technology best practices all the same. Your organization also rarely provides you with sufficient individual cyber insurance coverage for you as a professional, and never provides you individual or family coverage, right? Yet, your personal, family, and professional cyber risks are commingled and leave you exposed individually to even imprisonment. Area 4, understand what your executive cyber avatar is actually composed of, and what therefore requires cybersecuring. There are 6 steps towards cybersecuring your self-focused professional, personal, and family cyber avatar. Step 1, infuse geopolitics into your tech and behavioral choices. For example, choosing the wrong country's device manufacturer can cost you your data being spied on by its government. Step 2, your devices. For example, right, phones, apps, laptops, desktops, Internet of Things devices, for example, Alexa, smart fridges, etc., including when to use burner devices and what kind. Step 3, your cloud infrastructure. So email, data storage, chat platforms, business software, and other cloud technologies. Step 4, your social media. Step 5, your passwords and authentication. Step 6, the cybersecurity of travel, including around the office, to building occupied by others, in elevators, switching across cellular and Wi-Fi networks, around town, in cars, restaurants, meetings, domestically in your own country, at airports and airport lounges through security and planes, then internationally to and flying over countries friendly and less friendly to your own, right? And then to government buildings, foreign and domestic, in your own and other countries. And bear in mind, this is just a starting overview of your self-focused avatar. Area 5, taking control of the cybersecurity of each of these 6 steps means you must analyze and understand what general and executive risks you face in each category step. 2, what cybersecure behaviors and strategies must you practice in this category? And 3, what cybersecure tech devices do you need to obtain and rid yourself of, right? Area 6, you must understand the interaction of your devices and how you need to cybersecure that device interconnectivity while at home and while on the move, traveling abroad or at home. So these are the 6 areas. And as each of your board directors and executives authentically lives these 6 areas and underlying 6 steps of your cyber avatar and implements them in your people culture, you'll not only gain a culture of cybersecurity, but a scalable one at that, from your board down, not just your CISO. Anything short of this avatar being cybersecure, and you stand no chance against hackers. Does that make sense? Now, step 3 of getting trained requires that after taking control of your self-focused cybersecurity, you need to now take control of your organization-focused cybersecurity by fully understanding and discharging your fiduciary duties, responsibilities, strategies, and tactics. This is composed of 4 sub-steps. Step 3.1, develop an organization-wide board and C-suite cybersecurity strategy. Okay? Step 3.2, develop your organization's geopolitical cyber response strategy, all the more important because of Russia-Ukraine's effect on future of cyber defense, right? Step 3.3, develop your organization's regulatory cybersecurity policy response strategy. And then finally, 3.4, develop your organization's corporate and individual cyber insurance strategy. Let's first get into step 3.1, your board cybersecurity strategy training. In the past, boards relied on CISOs producing a cybersecurity strategy for the organization. Unfortunately, those CISOs would generally get insufficient input or even buy-in from directors and executives underinformed or uninformed on cybersecurity-focused strategy, execution budget, or even compliance requirements, much less their individual roles in authentically fostering a culture of cybersecurity or their own individual, very, very real cybersecurity fiduciary duties. The result? An incomplete bottom-up strategy from the CISO that completely omitted the fact that cybersecurity is an issue of corporate strategy, not IT strategy, of technology innovation and regulatory policy response strategy, not just compliance, and of competitive market positioning, not IT compliance. And that, as such, it is not only a fiduciary issue, but 100% a board issue, and therefore an executive team-wide issue. Does that make sense? A cybersecurity strategy must be driven by boards and executive teams holistically, and it needs to be informed by and cover 4 issues. Issue 1, understand the very costly impact of an insufficient board cybersecurity strategy, including that financial fines are real, organization-wide and individual level. 2, up to 5 years in prison for cybersecurity negligence is real and getting worse. 3, wrath of regulators is real. And 4, potential for loss of your entire organization's legacy and your legacy is real. Okay? Issue 2, your strategy should cover 8 areas of board and executive oversight. 1, your organization's 3 avatars: physical, digital, and cybersecure. 2, cybersecurity oversight, which you should take immediate responsibility for if your board does not already. 3, corporate strategy and cybersecurity strategy. 4, integration of strategy, tech innovation, and regulatory policy response in your cyber strategy. 5, cyber risk assessment oversight over the organization. 6, cybersecurity practices assessment and resilience posture improvement oversight. Okay? And 7, breach planning and rehearsing oversight. This is critical. Your board needs to not just participate in planning, but also rehearsing, okay? And overseeing the entire process. 8, setting expectations for management and staying informed. That is your fiduciary duty. Now, issue 3, understand your own by group, by individual, and by topic cybersecurity fiduciary duties and execute on them via clearly defined checklists. For example, group-specific checklists like board-wide versus committee level, then individual-specific checklists like chairman versus head of risk committee versus CEO versus CFO duties, and then topic-specific checklists like investment committee due diligence versus hiring versus ransom attack response duties checklist. Issue 4, understand and oversee similar group, individual, and topic-specific checklist adherence for each of your directors and executives. For example, is your CEO aware that he or she has their own checklists for cybersecurity governance, risk assessment, or organizational culture execution? Most CEOs still don't. There are also specific checklists for CISOs, and many of them for CISOs, CFOs, chief legal officers, COOs, heads of HR, chief data officers. Are they aware of and executing on them? So these are the 4 issue areas of your board cybersecurity strategy. 1, understand the costly impact of an insufficient board cybersecurity strategy. 2, make sure your strategy covers the 8 areas of board and executive oversight. 3, understand your own by group, by individual, and by topic cybersecurity fiduciary duties and execute on them via clearly defined checklists. And 4, understand and oversee similar group, individual, and topic-specific checklist adherence for each of your directors and executives. Only this approach delivers for you a holistic board-level cybersecurity strategy while keeping your individual directors and executives clear on their collective and individual fiduciary duties. 2, keeps corporate strategy and cybersecurity strategy in lockstep. 3, creates a natural push-pull relationship between your board and your CISO collaboration, with board and CISO strategies fully informing each other. And 4, prepares the organization for breach deterrence, but also thus for avoidance of steep financial and imprisonment consequences of a breach. Does that make sense? Step 3.2 of your organization-wide focused cybersecurity training is to develop your organization's geopolitical cyber response strategy. All the more important given Russia-Ukraine cyber fallout going forward. In the past, boards would often ignore holistic geopolitical strategy like this, instead reactively responding to news, cyber threat or cyber terrorist attacks, corporate espionage campaigns or regulations, often ignoring geopolitics altogether due to lack of time, awareness, budget, whatever. The unfortunate result? Playing constant catch-up to global threats or being at their mercy. In the increasingly geopolitically charged cybersecurity climate, your board can no longer make strategy, policy, or technology innovation choices that ignore global geopolitical and competitive pressures that expose you to nation-state level cyber attacks. You must, therefore, 1, learn how to robustly assess geopolitical risk to you and your organization. 2, Understand the geopolitical players that may be targeting you actively, which are a passive risk to you, what risks they present to your organization, and what you need to do about it. 3, learn how to, and actually assess, the role your government plays in your organization level cybersecurity calculus. 4, determine which are the right relationships and develop them with government agencies and law enforcement that have a hand in your cyber defense against foreign adversaries. Developing these while under attack is way too late. 5, learn how to assess geopolitical effects on your board and executives' travel cybersecurity. In order to fully discharge your board and executive fiduciary duty of protecting your organization, your employees, and your legacy from cyber threats, your board, executive, and CISO cybersecurity strategy must be properly informed by the correct geopolitical risk calculus and corresponding response strategy. Has to. Such a strategy is the only way to ensure your board and executive team are no longer reactive to geopolitical pressures of cybersecurity and threats to it. Step 3.3 of your organization-focused cybersecurity training is to develop your organization's regulatory cybersecurity policy response strategy. Now, in the past, boards would often ignore this kind of holistic strategy, instead finding themselves reactively responding to news or regulations too little too late, not only not staying ahead of regulations, as is a board's duty, but unfortunately often completely failing to stay ahead of what matters much more than regulations, and that's hackers who can cost you the entire company. Boards must develop a proactive strategy that follows 4 principles. First, understand federal, state, local, and international laws and regulations you're subject to complying with so you avoid regulatory fines, including imprisonment. Second, understand the lawmakers behind these so you not only know whom to lobby when necessary, but based on lawmakers involved in hackers' innovation curve, can proactively and better predict where regulations are headed. Third, understand industry strategy, best practices, standards, and frameworks, general and your industry-specific ones, to stay ahead of and deter hackers and regulators. And fourth, develop a simple, to-the-point strategy for complying with regulations, using best industry practices and frameworks, and effectively predict their changes. This kind of strategy is the only way for your board to properly discharge its fiduciary duty of protecting your organization against adverse effects of regulation, maximize its potential to capitalize on positive regulations, and optimize its toolkit for staying ahead of competition and deterring hackers. And it's your board's job to ensure this strategy exists. Now, step 3.4 of your organization-focused cybersecurity training is to develop your cyber insurance strategy for both your corporate and individual coverage. That usually surprises executives and board directors. And in the past, boards and executives would, unfortunately, at worst, not get any cyber insurance, or get it erroneously thinking it will cover all the cost of a breach. It will never cover the opportunity cost of time lost in an operational shutdown, or the emotional angst and reputational damage caused by a breach, or even the full financial cost, if any, given mounting policy exclusions and increasing regulatory limits on coverage. Or they'd at best get what seems like a comprehensive corporate cyber insurance policy, yet one that has 2 huge holes. 1, no corporate policy sufficiently covers you individually as an officer of the company, leaving you exposed individually. That usually surprises folks. And 2, no corporate policy covers you at all as a private citizen or as a family, even though your home networks now suffer threats against your company since you're now working from home, and even though your personal and family life is being increasingly targeted, therefore as a way to get to your organization. right? What's the result? Well, you get breached and realize that only a portion of the financial breach costs are covered, or that the insurer's ambiguous exclusionary language makes it okay for it to not pay out at all, leaving you fully exposed to the breach. That happens. Or that the operational, emotional, and reputational costs are not only not covered, but dwarf the financial costs in magnitude and impact, often paralyzing your people and operations or shutting down an organization altogether. Or that your ransom payment isn't covered by insurance, leaving you with the breach cleanup bill and the ransom bill, on top of regulatory wrath for incorrectly paying the ransom to begin with. And you still have no access to data because hackers, guess what, lied, right, about giving back your data based on payment. Instead, before you even get a cyber insurance policy, you should first work with a professional to develop an insurance strategy that absolutely covers, one, not just your organization, but also individual directors and officers, and the how of choosing the right insurer and corporate and individual policies. Two, all your financial, operational, emotional, and reputational costs of a breach. Three, how to work with law enforcement to ensure policy payout. Four, how to deal with exclusionary language. And five, answers to questions like, how do we optimize D&O, commercial general liability, and cyber insurance so they're not overlapping, yet provide appropriate coverage, right? Or how much cyber insurance coverage do we need? What should it cost? How can we cover director and executive individual negligence? Can we? With ransom attacks on meteoric rise, as is the case, how is coverage changing? And it's changing, right? Drastically. Or how do I cover corporate policies exclusions of my personal and home life despite my work from home, right? Where should the corporate policy leave off and the personal policy pick up? What should personal cyber insurance cover? Who should pay for it, company or me, right? How should I assess quality of corporate and individual cyber insurance and policies? How do I choose the ultimate one? Does that make sense, right? Does that make sense? Work with a professional to get this done. So we've now covered the first 3 steps of getting trained. Assessing your threats, 1, mastering your self-focused cybersecurity, 2, and mastering your organization-focused cybersecurity, 3. Now, if these 3 steps are the Bible of your self-focused and organization-focused cybersecurity, and thus your organization-wide culture of cybersecurity, then the final step of getting trained, step 4, is meant to produce for you your own personalized version of that Bible for your own professional, personal, family, and organization's life, one that's fully execution ready and personalized to your own situational dynamics, so you never again live haphazardly or allow your organization to when it comes to your own individual and organization cybersecurity, which in turn helps you achieve the ultimate holy grail, a breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity from the board down. This idea is completely new in the market because there has never existed a 360-degree approach to creating a culture of cybersecurity or even cybersecuring an organization by having each individual employee, much less director or executive, follow a personalized, self-focused, professional, personal, and family, and organization-focused, fiduciary cybersecurity blueprint. The result has therefore been boards and management teams that were neither drivers of a cybersecure culture for the organization, for their families, nor an example of one themselves as individuals, professionally or in their private lives. Thus, unintentionally, but nonetheless destructively, promoting a culture of cyber insecurity. Because you can't succeed at what you can't measure with your personalized cybersecurity blueprint, you have a clear and full dashboard for you and each of your stakeholders on what they should be doing. Now, this includes dashboards for, 1, your individual cybersecurity as professionals, private citizens, right? and which will also then strengthen your organization's cybersecurity, right? 2, your collective cybersecurity as a board of directors, a management team, an audit committee, as a family at home, with each group micro-targeted by hackers for the information it has access to, which will then further strengthen, again, your entire organization's cybersecurity. And 3, a dashboard for your organization's cybersecurity through your board's fiduciary, geopolitical, regulatory policy, and cyber insurance dashboards, which will seriously aid what your CTO is doing from a network and enterprise cybersecurity perspective. This will, in turn, provide your organization with not just a culture of cybersecurity and 360-degree individual cybersecurity, but with real organization-wide cyber breach deterrence against the fast-rising and already $6 trillion cybercrime economy, as well as full compliance with regulations and avoidance of penalties that include indeed up to 5 years in prison for negligent directors and officers. And if you ensure that your employees live a similar, even if scaled down version of such a blueprint, especially the self-focused part, just imagine if each of your directors, officers, and employees followed such a cybersecurity blueprint of their own. Wouldn't this culture of cybersecurity make your organization infinitely safer than now, thus helping you create serious breach deterrence against the $9 million financial price tag of a breach and the operational, emotional, and reputational headaches of a breach, as well as avoid individual director and officer imprisonment or for negligence? Wouldn't you feel so much safer than now? Now, step 5 of creating a breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity capable of avoiding a $9 million breach is to keep your newly forged cyber acuity and self and organization-focused cybersecurity blueprint up to date. Because with cybercrime rising from $6 trillion in 2021 to $10.5 trillion by 2025, hacker innovation expanding with AI and quantum computing, exponentially expanding digitalization of our world, your company and your digital footprint, all exponentially expanding the attack surface, and with regulators changing your fiduciary duties and compliance requirements daily, your blueprint changes daily, making your need to stay current paramount. Does that make sense? Now, unfortunately, in the past, we've not really had a good way for boards and management teams to stay sufficiently current on their cybersecurity. Any get up to speed kind of training, and most definitely any so-called continued education thereafter that a board or executive team would go through, would have serious holes in it vis-a-vis areas it needed to actually cover, as evidenced by the fact that hackers are $5.8 trillion ahead of the cybersecurity solutions market, and companies still keep getting breached. For example, there still is no training in the market that teaches each director and executive their cybersecurity fiduciary duties 360 degrees. We're the only ones. The result, a board and a management team that, one, is neither a driver of a cybersecure culture for the organization, for their families, nor a consistent example of one themselves as individuals, professionally or in their private lives. 2, is lax in its continuous cybersecure culture optimization efforts, and therefore by default promotes a culture of cyber insecurity. And 3, does not fulfill its fiduciary responsibilities against the rising threat of cybercrime. Instead, with cybercrime-driven and therefore ever-changing nature of 1, cybersecure behaviors, technologies, and their best practices, 2, cybersecurity laws, regulations, policies, frameworks, standards, and compliance requirements, 3, cyber insurance practices, coverage gaps, exclusions, and policy optimization strategies, and therefore 4, resulting board and executive fiduciary duties and responsibilities you need to follow, you require specialist knowledge to keep you current on these issue areas. Knowledge unlikely resident within your team, or at least not cheaply. As a fiduciary, you must secure access to an ongoing cybersecurity strategy and tactical thought leadership knowledge bank that will keep you and your team current on the ever-changing nature of these issue areas. This includes access to detailed checklists that you and each of your stakeholders, from board directors to CEO, CFO, Chief Legal Officer, CHRO, and CFO, need to adhere to and comply with to not only maintain a culture of cybersecurity, but to avoid individual director and officer fines, including imprisonment. Access to such a knowledge bank is the only way to achieve continuous, consistent, clearly deterrent cyber defense posture for you as an individual, for your board, executive team, and your entire organization. In fact, your executive cybersecurity blueprint for yourself individually, for your family, and for your organization, its cyber breach deterrence, your culture of cybersecurity, and thus your very avoidance of the $9 million cyber breach and increasing risk of negligence-caused imprisonment all depend on you acquiring access to this kind of continuous thought leadership knowledge bank. Does that make sense? Logically, right? Does that make sense? Now, step 6, the final step of creating and maintaining a breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity capable of avoiding the $9 million breach is to partner with and hire the right external cyber defense partners who can help continuously optimize your board level and IT level cybersecurity strategies and tactical plans, and who are ready and capable to fill in when and where your problem awareness, expertise, time, or budget for internal resource hiring are insufficient to address the problem. Previously, you'd pay thousands of dollars per consulting hour, and you'd still not get the result you needed because board-level cybersecurity expertise didn't really exist, right? Which is why cybercrime has gone rampant and boards continue to fail creating and maintaining cybersecure cultures, right? Thus keeping the organization at risk to hackers and the $5.8 trillion cybercrime versus cybersecurity solutions gap. Instead, because neither you nor your board, executive team, nor your CISO are experts on all that's required to keep your board-level cybersecurity strategy, culture of cybersecurity, and self- and organization-focused cybersecurity blueprint optimized, make sure you surround yourself with both strategy and IT cybersecurity experts, with both private and government sector expertise that can address complex questions as they arise during your cultural transformation and its ensuing optimization. And make sure that these external experts, one, not only speak board level and CISO level cybersecurity strategy and tactical execution, but can easily cover your self-focused and organization-focused cybersecurity needs, including cybersecurity fiduciary advisory for your professional situation. Two, aren't just experts in prevention, but also in incident response, and can expertly help you integrate cybersecurity board strategy, regulatory policy and geopolitical strategy, and cyber insurance strategy into your corporate strategy, and vice versa. Three, are also proven as a managed security services provider, MSSP, and can not only drive your board strategy, but also your CISO strategy for implementation of mission-critical controls like data protection and zero trust, access control management, security awareness and skills training for your employees, incident response management, email and web browser protection, as well as devices and software authorization. And four, make sure these external experts aren't just technology speak fluent, but can translate what's most important into board strategy and fiduciary language so you focus on what matters most. Does that make sense? So to summarize the 6 steps you'd need to follow to create and maintain a breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity: 1, assess and prioritize your threats. 2, master your self-focused cybersecurity. 3, master your organization-focused cybersecurity, including board cybersecurity strategy and strategy for geopolitical cyber response, regulatory cybersecurity policy response, and cyber insurance. 4, synthesize steps 1 through 3 into your own self-focused and organization-focused cybersecurity blueprint. And 5, keep your newly forged cybersecurity blueprint up to date through access to an appropriate knowledge database. And finally, 6, partner with and hire the right external cyber defense experts. Do these steps make sense? Now, there are a few options you might consider to help you achieve your breach deterrent blueprint of self-focused and organization-focused cybersecurity and a culture of cybersecurity that indeed has a chance of preventing that $9 million breach. Your first option is to attend cybersecurity courses at places like Stanford, MIT, Wharton, Harvard. But these are predominantly geared towards CISOs and more technical audiences, with few focusing on your 360-degree problem or even covering, much less robustly covering, self-focused professional, personal, or family cybersecurity of your executives or even non-executive employees, or organization-focused cybersecurity of board cybersecurity strategy, much less geopolitical, regulatory, or cyber insurance strategy, or even 360 of building a culture of cybersecurity. These courses also do not integrate cybersecurity strategy, policy, and tech innovation, yet hacker innovation requires you to do so. And of course, these institutions do not have any industry cybersecurity databases or advisory for your continued cybersecurity optimization. Despite these several shortcomings, you'd still pay $3,000 to $8,000 per course seat, so $48,000 to $128,000 for, let's say, 8 board directors and 8 executives, and you'd spend 8 to 15 hours per person, and you would still be nowhere near solving the problem. I've been exposed to every single one of these institutions. Your second option is to hire a consulting firm like McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Deloitte, or another top consulting firm. And you would get strong brand recognition and track record of advisory, but not in 360-degree board cybersecurity strategy or self-focused cybersecurity expertise. Furthermore, training as such is not part of their consulting model. If they do train your board and your executive team on anything, it would be part of a formal advisory engagement where, for a typical 3-month strategy consulting case, McKinsey charges clients between $1 million to $1.5 million. And at best, you'd get access to white papers on cybersecurity and no live databases on changes in fiduciary duties, regulatory landscape, cyber insurance, or cybersecure technologies and behaviors. So your cultural transformation would not only be incomplete, you'd be charged millions for continued access to services. Your third option is to subscribe to industry databases such as Gartner or Forrester Research. And while both provide high-quality database-based research, their cybersecurity research is severely limited still and doesn't deliver anywhere near the level required to address the question we started off with today. Furthermore, training as such is not part of these databases' business model, and while they do provide consulting services, its breadth is limited to what's in their databases, which again is cybersecurity limited and not board or C-suite focused. Pricing-wise, these databases are also cost prohibitive for most SMBs. Corporate access runs anywhere between $25,000 to $100,000 per year per seat, and it's assigned to individuals at the corporation, so if you want multiple seats, your cost increases dramatically. For example, Gartner's most basic database costs $30,000 per seat per year and doesn't offer the level of board and executive cybersecurity knowledge, breadth, or depth you require for the scope at hand. So again, you still don't achieve your outcome. Your fourth option is to hire CyberNation Central's executive cybersecurity blueprint team, us. Doing so, you'd not only eliminate these previous limitations, but you'd also, 1, get your entire board and executive team professionally trained on all the 4 steps you need to get trained on. A, your threat assessment. B, mastering your self-focused professional, personal, and family cybersecurity. C, mastering your organization-wide cybersecurity from board strategy to geopolitical, regulatory, and even cyber insurance strategy. And D, developing your own personalized breach deterrent blueprint of self and organization-focused cybersecurity and a culture of cybersecurity, and do so in as few as 6 hours in one sitting if you wish. Focus solely on your needs and your organization's needs. Signing on with our executive cybersecurity blueprint training suite and coaching for each of your directors and executives, you'd also, too, gain 24-hour access to our databases. So you keep your cybersecurity blueprint current. These would cover your cybersecure behaviors and technologies, cybersecurity regulations, including laws, policies, frameworks, standards, and compliance requirements, cyber insurance, including corporate and individual coverage best practices, coverage gaps, exclusions, and policy optimization strategies, and your board and executive fiduciary duties and responsibilities you all need to follow. And 3, you'd gain access to an industry-winning board and IT strategy, tech innovation, and regulatory policy advisory team with decades of private and government sector cybersecurity and organizational strategy expertise across the US and around the globe. And you would achieve this all at a fraction of the market cost. To schedule your complimentary strategy session with us and find out if the Executive Cybersecurity Blueprint is the right fit with you and your organization needs, or if you already know you'd like to explore working with us and having your board and executive team coached on how to achieve and maintain this breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity, including your cyber threat assessment and mastery of self and organization-focused cybersecurity, including your personalized blueprint for each of you, click the Book Your Complimentary Strategy session at the top of this page, or go to www.executivecybersecurity.blueprint.com. We look forward to speaking with you. Again, this is for board directors, CEOs, entrepreneurs, investors, and other executives. Those who understand that learning how to behave cybersecurely as professionals and in their private life, and then bringing that culture into the organization is the only way to lead a culture of cybersecurity authentically. And those who realize they have a fiduciary duty over creation and fostering of and oversight over a culture of cybersecurity in their organizations in order to stand even a chance of avoiding the $9 million financial price tag of a cyber breach, much less the operational, emotional, and reputational cyber breach fallout, but who are also struggling with what behaving cybersecurely even means, right? In the ever-evolving hacker innovation curve as professionals, private citizens, and families, or how to create and oversee that culture of cybersecurity in their organizations most effectively and efficiently. Again, hundreds of executives all over the globe, from corporate CEOs, board chairmen and women, and directors to venture and private equity investors, as well as UN and government officials and executives, have entrusted CyberNation Central's Executive Cybersecurity Blueprint with their boards, executive teams, and broader stakeholder groups transformations from cyber insecure to cybersecure culture drivers, achieving serious cyber breach deterrence for themselves and their organizations, with boards and executive teams that serve as authentic examples of cybersecurity themselves. We've been privileged to help clients who represent marquee organizations like Citi, Hewlett-Packard, the UN, Soros Open Society Foundation, Harvard University, HBS, NYU, the Wharton School, the NSA, Imperial College, UBS, Bank of America, University of Chicago, and countless others. In fact, the other 90% that are small and medium enterprises that represent many industries, from healthcare to defense, national security, finance, NGO, law, real estate, construction, and manufacturing, among others, from across 6 continents. Here's what just a few clients have had to say about their blueprint experience. CEO of a healthcare company, former CEO of a venture capital and family office platform, and former investment banker, Dominic, said, prior to going through the blueprint, I thought I'd need to hire very expensive cybersecurity experts to evaluate our individual cybersecurity and teach us how to instill a culture of cybersecurity in our organization, similar to the cost of cybersecurity for my company's IT networks. However, the blueprint not only taught me, my board, and executives how to make assessment and implement improvements ourselves for a fraction of the price of consultants and in barely a weekend of our time to get trained, but also had the added benefit of teaching us the behaviors we all needed to adopt, and it gave us a full board strategy for cybersecurity, including checklists for our oversight responsibilities as a board and management team. Great. It even gave us a full geopolitical, regulatory, and cyber insurance strategy. Very cool. Yes, it is. Entrepreneur CEO of a global 100% virtual transatlantic corporation, on the other hand, James, said, the feeling I had when I completed the full blueprint experience was, I can do this. I can not only take control of my individual, professional, personal, and family cybersecurity, but I now also know how to develop that kind of a culture in my organization from the ground up and sustain it. Great. Senior advisor to vice president of a Central American country and board director herself, June, said, as much as I wanted to improve our cybersecurity, I was concerned that the training would consume a lot of time, which, like most people's, she says, and she's right, is scarce. I can say that not only is it not time consuming, but it is very profitable time, which I am glad to have dedicated to strengthening my knowledge in this area and incorporating best practices. Fantastic. Angela Z, senior official in the office of the UN Secretary General, also added, I thought the price was very reasonable compared to the short and long-term benefits. And indeed, the average price tag of a breach for an average company in the US is $9 million per breach. For a small and medium business in the US, it's $6.35 million per breach. And the probability of that breach happening within a 2-year period is 33.32% as of 2021. That means you essentially have a 100% probability adjusted chance of experiencing a breach within the next 2 years. That will cost you an average of $2.1 million if you're an SMB or $3 million if you're a larger corporation. That alone should in fact be a liability on your books, unless you're seriously mitigated by breach prevention. And that doesn't even include operational, emotional, and reputational headache costs of the breach, which too often dwarf the financial cost, unfortunately. Would you rather pay $2 million to hackers and suffer the emotional, reputational damage, or pay $25,000, $50,000, or even $100,000 to develop a breach deterrent culture of cybersecurity from the board down? I'm sure you're thinking, well, but this won't happen to us. Indeed, most businesses think that. And even more board directors naively think that too. And I say naively because unfortunately, more than 50% of SMBs experience a cyber attack annually. So, $2 million cash out plus emotional, operational, and reputational nightmare, or proper breach prevention now. Which is it? Do you need any better ROI justification than that? From just a financial perspective, even if you paid $100,000 to develop a culture of cybersecurity, and you don't have to, you'd be paying 20 times less for the training and coaching than for the financial cost of the breach alone. Even more if you count all the other costs that you avoided. So what can you expect when you, your board, and executive team subscribe to the Executive Cybersecurity Blueprint, right? Well, first, you'll become an executive level cybersecurity threat detecting cruise missile, right? And you'll finally know what cybersecure behavior really means, so hackers cannot easily get to any of you or your families. Second, you'll get access to training that, one, brings you NSA expertise and offers your team 360-degree technology, behavioral, strategy, geopolitical, regulatory, and insurance cybersecurity training that covers your professional, personal, and family cybersecurity. Two, helps you understand and optimize your role as fiduciaries of your three organizations: the physical, the increasingly digital, and the cybersecure. And three, helps your board integrate corporate technology innovation and regulatory policy strategy into one cohesive way forward, so you feel like you're leaving your competition in the dust. You will finally know what it means to develop a culture of cybersecurity, how to do it, and you will actually have created it at a fraction of the price of a top consulting firm that a consulting firm would charge you and still wouldn't deliver on the outcome. And your CTO will praise you daily, I promise you, because you'll now be their partner instead of an obstacle. Just ask your CTO what I mean. Plus, you'll now attend board meetings knowing fully what your cybersecurity strategy should be and how to consistently oversee its optimization. So, if you would like to explore working with us and having your board and executive team coached on how to achieve and maintain this breach-deterrent culture of cybersecurity, including your threat assessment and mastery of self and organization-focused cybersecurity, including your own personalized blueprint for each of you, schedule your complimentary strategy session with us. We look forward to hearing from you.